Author and columnist Mark Steyn has been following this too, and he joins us tonight. So, Mark, typically you'd want to withhold judgment on something like this because you don't know what's in the letter. But here's what we do know. Judge Kavanaugh went to high school at Georgetown Prep in Bethesda, Maryland. If there was a crime alleged 35 years later, presumably that would be referred to the Maryland State Police or the local police in Bethesda. Instead, Senator Feinstein sent it to the FBI, federal authorities who would have no obvious jurisdiction. So that tells me right there that this is a crock, and it's the worst kind of smear, a smear you can't rebut against a man with a wife and small children. I'm not sure I've seen anything lower, ever.
No, you're absolutely right there. As you say, the FBI has no obvious jurisdiction here. I think in the normal course of events, given that this is something to do with the junior prom in Maryland in 1981 or 1979 or whenever the hell it was, it would be going to juvenile court. So this would be the first United States Supreme Court justice to be tried in juvenile court. That's a legal first. I think what we have here is actually the equivalent of what happened when Comey briefed the president on the so-called Steele dossier about Russian hookers in his hotel room and all the rest of it. And that gave the pretext to the media, because Comey then leaked news of the meeting, that gave the media a pretext to discuss the dossier. Likewise, Senator Feinstein releasing, as everyone said, the secret letter from a secret person about a secret matter about the high school prom, has now given cover for a lot of sexual allegations. We don't know what they are. They're half a lifetime ago. And as you say, it's not something that he can be rebutted. And the real battle here, Tucker, is actually between Dianne Feinstein and the New Left. They were disappointed by the big shot Democrat dinosaurs' performance in the hearing rooms, and they want something a little more Antifa, a little more Black Lives Matter, a little more Bernie Sanders. And it's pathetic to see Dianne Feinstein, and I've no idea what she did at her high school prom, however many years ago that was. It's pathetic to see Dianne Feinstein reduced to this.
Well, it's disgusting, and the dynamic you describe is exactly what's happening. The dinosaurs who are on their way out in charge of that party are terrified, and they're responding to them up. Let me ask you a question that seems reasonable to me. It'll probably spark protests against me somehow. And I don't know what the allegation is, and I'm prepared to withhold judgment on that. But a 35-year-old allegation, if it exists, that has never been reported to the police, doesn't that at least raise the question of why has it never been reported, assuming it hasn't been?
Yes, it's actually, I think it's wrong to go back and relitigate a past you didn't litigate at the time. I think that's very, very dangerous. You see that as part of this moral panic that has gone on over the Me Too things. I mean, if you go back to the nearest comparable thing, the Clarence Thomas business, that was within the previous decade. We're talking about something that was never I mean, the only reassuring thing about this is that, as you know, investigations are interminable in this country and in Washington in particular. And the only good thing about this is that the FBI has looked at it and kicked it out of their purview in 10 minutes flat. And good for them. They're not opening an investigation. They've just given it to the White House. They don't want to touch this. She's just diminished her own reputation by participating in this smear.
I've never met Brett Kavanaugh. I have no personal stake in this whatsoever. But honestly, I think any normal person should be offended by this. This is too much. It's too low. It's disgusting.
Oh, absolutely. It is. And this high school, I gather this is where Neil Gorsuch went to school too. So apparently it's where all Supreme Court judges, that's what it's the preparatory school for. So maybe he did something at his prom too. Maybe it all goes back to the proms
it's
at
unbelievable.
this particular school.
It's an all-boys school, for whatever it's worth. Mark Steyn, we'll see you in just a minute. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Meanwhile, amid the ongoing Mueller investigation, the calls for impeachment of President Trump continue from some Democrats should they win control in the midterms. But Obama Defense Secretary Leon Panetta is saying that Democrats should wait.
I think the most important thing that the Democrats could do is to allow Bob Mueller to complete his work. I think Bob Mueller's report will ultimately determine whether or not there are going to be additional steps taken against the president.
Joining me now, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner, Philip Wegman. Philip, good to see you laboring on Labor Day.
Good to see you too, Ebony.
Okay, so we hear from Panetta there. He's basically saying, chill out and really wait for the process to complete itself. But we know that there are many high-profile Democrats that are indeed running on impeachment, with that being at the top of their to-do list when and if they get to Washington. Do you think that those Democrats, Philip, could be putting themselves in a bit of a self-induced problem area by getting in front of, as Panetta is talking about here, the Mueller report itself?
I certainly do, because while impeachment talk is definitely sexy, it's fundamentally dangerous for Democrats, because right now the left has never been more motivated to go to the polls. If you start talking about impeachment, about kicking the president out of office, that gives the right another reason to show up on Election Day. So if you're Donald Trump or you're any of those 237 Republicans in the House, you have got to hope that Democrats don't stop talking about impeachment between now and November.
Yes. Certainly adding fuel to the Republican base. Let me ask you a more policy-based question. What do you think it says about the Democrats that are running on impeachment towards those midterms, that they're running on impeachment and not, say, an economic message, say, not a national security message or something that's more policy-based? What kind of commentary do you think that is on their political strength or weakness?
Well, I think it's more of a commentary on their geography. You see a lot of people who are pro-impeachment in blue states, not red states right now. And I think that this is very interesting. And Leon Panetta and Nancy Pelosi, they're urging their members not to go full Maxine Waters here, because they know that on top of the detrimental political effect, they know that Democrats don't have a ready-made case for impeachment yet. I mean, what are they going to impeach Trump over? Is it going to be Russian collusion? Is it going to be obstruction of justice? Is it going to be a violation of campaign finance law? They don't have their frontal assault put together for when they do want to go forward with impeachment, if they do. And so right now, it just seems too early and too risky.
So let's pivot to Rudy Giuliani. The president's lawyer, rather, has been very vocal, doing a lot of interviews, one of which with the Daily Beast this past week, where he spoke about a counter report that the White House is reportedly planning, as we speak, to get in front of the Mueller investigation. And Panetta said that he was warning Rudy Giuliani, basically, to be careful to not get too close to obstruction of justice. And what he's talking about there, of course, is this kind of stated purpose from Rudy Giuliani that the counter report is to undermine the credibility of the Mueller report. Philip, I want to ask you, is it possible that that strategy, if indeed is true as being reported, could backfire on the White House and Rudy Giuliani? Because what if, I'm just saying what if, because none of us know what's actually in the Mueller report, what if it exonerates the president, and thus you've got a situation where the credibility of Mueller's already been jeopardized?
Well, first of all, Robert Mueller is the one man in Washington who doesn't leak. His team has been incredibly tight-lipped, so it's going to be fascinating to see what we finally find out when they do present their findings. But so I do think it's interesting that you have Giuliani going out there trying to undermine the special counsel from the beginning. That much is very clear. And so I think that if you're a Democrat, you ought to just be prudent here and keep your powder dry, because there's a lot of smoke around this administration. We don't know what is out there just yet. And the worst thing that Democrats could do for themselves, if they do end up taking the majority in the House, is paint themselves into a corner on the campaign trail, and then on day one, before all the evidence has been gathered and before they have an opportunity at impeachment, to be in a position where their base is demanding it.
All right, Philip, you're suggesting prudence from the Democrats. I'll ask you a final question. Do you suggest that same prudence for the White House here? Would you say that they should be prudent as well and wait for the Mueller report, or do you think they should move forward in advance of that with this counter report?
Absolutely. Law and order is the most important thing when it comes to democratic republics. Robert Mueller is doing his job right now. The president took an oath to defend and uphold the U.S. Constitution, and I think that the prudent thing to do from the White House would say that I'm going to defend and uphold that Constitution by letting Robert Mueller do his job. So far, we've seen a lot of cooperation. So a lot of cooperation on the details, but, some sword rattling publicly from Giuliani. It seems like this White House, just like Democrats, needs to come up with a cohesive strategy.
All right, Philip Wegman from the Washington Examiner. Enjoy your day. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you, Ebony.
All right.